8 months after the humans left, the galaxy was falling apart faster than anyone had imagined possible. Desperation drove the alien leaders to try something they had never done before. A secret coalition formed among the major species led by Viridian Chancellor Kex Nama and Kalarian High Counselor Theta 9. They decided to launch secret missions to human space, hoping to negotiate some kind of help, or at least get access to the technical information they desperately needed. The coalition had to work in complete secrecy because many assembly members still believed that contacting humans would be seen as weakness or betrayal. The official position was that the galaxy could solve its problems without human assistance, but privately, everyone knew this was becoming impossible. Every day brought new disasters that alien engineers could not fix. Captain Veltar of the Xanthari Navy was chosen to lead the first reconnaissance mission to human space. His ship was equipped with the most advanced sensors available, and his crew included the best scientists and diplomats from 5 different species. They approached the Sol system very carefully, expecting to find humans struggling with their own problems after being cut off from galactic trade and cooperation. The first shock came when their long-range sensors detected the human home system. Earth orbit was completely transformed. New space stations of unknown design surrounded the planet like a protective shell. The stations were much larger than anything humans had built before, and they used energy signatures that registered as completely unfamiliar. Technology. Massive construction projects were visible even from the outer edge of the solar system. Huge ships were being assembled in orbital shipyards that dwarfed the largest alien facilities. New types of spacecraft launched regularly from Earth, carrying what appeared to be colonization equipment and terraforming technology that looked far more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. Captain Veltar transmitted his findings back to the coalition with trembling hands. "They are not struggling without us," he reported in a voice filled with disbelief. "They are thriving. It looks like they have been preparing for this separation for years." The scout ships detected energy readings from human technology that seemed to operate on completely new scientific principles. The human ships moved through space using propulsion systems that produced no radiation signatures that alien sensors could identify. Some vessels seemed to appear and disappear instantly, as if they could teleport from one location to another. The construction work proceeded at speeds that should have been impossible, suggesting that humans had developed automation technology far beyond anything other species possessed. When the diplomatic vessels finally approached Earth orbital space, they received a polite but firm response from a human traffic controller. Named Chanwook Earth Space is currently closed to non-human vessels. Please maintain your distance and state your business through subspace communication only. The humans were not angry or hostile. They were simply treating the galactic species like any other foreign government. The coalition ambassadors tried to explain their desperate situation and request emergency assistance, but the human responses were both reasonable and terrifying. Human President Gemja spoke through secured communication channels with perfect diplomatic courtesy. "We understand your difficulties and sympathize with your situation. However, as we are no longer members of the Galactic Assembly, we cannot provide direct assistance without formal treaties and compensation agreements." The humans offered to discuss consulting contracts at what they called standard rates, but the prices they quoted were astronomical. Not because humans were being vindictive, but because they were treating the galaxy like any other client. The special relationship that had existed for 3 centuries was completely gone. The automatic willingness to help during emergencies had disappeared forever. Human negotiator Jae-Won explained their position with calm professionalism. "We spent 300 years sharing our knowledge and expertise freely as part of our assembly membership. Now that arrangement has ended, we are happy to provide technical assistance as independent contractors, but our rates reflect the true value of our services and the exclusivity of our knowledge." The coalition representatives realized with growing horror that humans had been massively undervaluing their contributions during their assembly membership. They had provided solutions to impossible problems and maintained galactic civilization essentially for free, while other species had contributed relatively little. The humans had been subsidizing everyone else, progress and innovation without anyone realizing it. Captain Veltar request to visit Earth's surface was denied politely but firmly. Human immigration officer Min Seo explained that Earth had implemented new security protocols that restricted access to essential personnel only. However, she offered to arrange virtual meetings, where human experts could discuss potential consulting arrangements. The virtual meetings revealed another shocking truth. Humans had developed new technologies during their 8 months of independence that surpassed anything they had created during 3 centuries of galactic cooperation. It seemed that working within assembly restrictions and committees had actually been holding back human innovation rather than encouraging it. Dr. Sung-ho, a human scientist, appeared on screen surrounded by equipment that alien experts could not identify. He explained that without the need to make their technology compatible with alien systems and without assembly regulations limiting their research, humans had made breakthrough discoveries at an unprecedented pace. The medical crisis that was killing millions across the galaxy could be solved easily, according to human Dr. He-jin. But doing so would require sharing proprietary technology that humans had developed since leaving the assembly. The price for this assistance would include full technology licensing agreements that would cost more than most planetary governments could afford. Human engineer Wu Jin offered to fix the failing shield generators, but explained that this would require installing completely new human-designed systems, since the old ones could not be repaired without access to human manufacturing facilities. The cost would include not just the new equipment, but also training programs for alien technicians and ongoing maintenance contracts. The coalition ships returned to assembly space carrying devastating news. They had not lost just human assistance. They had lost access to a level of technological capability that they had never fully understood or appreciated. The humans were moving forward, building something new and remarkable, while the rest of the galaxy struggled to maintain systems they could barely comprehend. Chancellor Kex Nama called another emergency session when she received the reconnaissance reports. The room fell silent as Captain Veltar described what he had seen in human space. The aliens had always assumed that humans needed the galaxy as much as the galaxy needed them. But this assumption had been completely wrong. The humans had been generous partners who shared their knowledge freely, but they had never been dependent partners who could not survive alone. In fact, separation from galactic bureaucracy and restrictions had unleashed human potential in ways that no one had imagined possible. The species that had been voted out for being too unpredictable had become too advanced for the galaxy to afford. As the coalition members absorbed this information, they began to understand the full magnitude of their mistake. They had feared human unpredictability, and in removing that perceived threat, they had freed humans to become something far beyond their reach. The galaxy they had tried to preserve was dying while humanity was reaching toward achievements that made their former contributions look primitive by comparison. 2 years had passed since humanity departed from the Galactic Assembly, and the galaxy looked completely different from what it had been before. Nearly half of the member worlds had withdrawn from the assembly to focus on their own survival, as they could no longer maintain the complex systems that had once connected civilizations across the stars. The grand dreams of galactic unity had crumbled into desperate attempts to preserve whatever remained of their technological civilization. Great Assembly Hall, where thousands of delegates had once gathered to discuss the future of the galaxy, now stood mostly empty, with only a few dozen representatives from the surviving member worlds. The magnificent chamber that had once echoed with speeches about cooperation and progress was now filled with reports of system failures, trade route collapses, and worlds going dark as their technology broke down beyond repair. Some alien species had managed to adapt better than others during the crisis. The Mokari people, who had been forced to evacuate their radiation-poisoned homeworld, discovered hidden strengths in their ancient philosophical traditions. They began developing their own innovative approaches to survival that drew on wisdom their ancestors had accumulated over millennia, but had been forgotten during the era of technological dependence. The Mokari refugees scattered across dozens of worlds started small communities where they combined traditional knowledge with whatever salvageable technology they could understand. Their crystal growing techniques, which had once been purely artistic, became practical methods for creating building materials and water purification systems. The exile from their homeworld had forced them to rediscover abilities they never knew they possessed. The Zenthari had suffered terribly during the space elevator disaster, but their methodical nature helped them slowly reverse engineer some of the simpler human maintenance protocols. They worked for months to understand basic repair procedures and gradually managed to restore some of their infrastructure to partial functionality. It was slow, dangerous work that cost many lives, but they were making progress toward technological independence. However, the majority of galactic civilization remained dependent on increasingly unreliable systems that they could neither properly maintain nor improve. Trade routes that had operated smoothly for centuries now suffered frequent breakdowns as navigation computers failed and communication relays went offline. Merchant ships often disappeared without trace when their life support systems malfunctioned in ways that alien engineers could not predict or prevent. Medical emergencies that had once been routine problems were now potential extinction events for entire species. The sophisticated treatment protocols developed by human doctors had been replaced by primitive methods that often failed to save patients. Hospitals across the galaxy were overwhelmed with diseases that had been easily curable just 2 years earlier, but now spread unchecked through populations. The Rillan plague that had broken out on Epsilon Ceti eventually killed half the population, before burning itself out through lack of new hosts. The cure had remained locked in the medical databases throughout the entire outbreak, a constant reminder of how helpless the galaxy had become without human expertise. Thousands of families mourned, loved ones who could have been saved if only they could access the knowledge that sat uselessly in computer storage. Meanwhile, disturbing reports continued to arrive from the edges of human space, painting a picture of expansion and development that seemed almost fantastical to alien observers. Human colonies were spreading throughout previously unexplored sectors of the galaxy, using ships that traveled faster than anything other species had ever built. The new human vessels seemed to ignore many of the physical limitations that restricted alien space travel. Long-range sensors detected human terraforming operations that could transform dead airless rocks into garden worlds within a matter of months rather than the centuries. Such projects had always required human agricultural technology, was producing food yields that defied everything alien scientists knew about biology and ecology. It appeared that humans had solved fundamental problems about energy, matter, and life itself. The most shocking discovery came when alien reconnaissance ships detected human communication networks that operated faster than light itself. Instantaneous communication across interstellar distances had been considered impossible by every galactic scientist, but humans were apparently using it routinely to coordinate their rapidly expanding civilization. The implications were staggering because it suggested human science had advanced far beyond anything the galaxy had achieved. Ambassador Cledon of the Alterran Syndicate stood before the remnants of the Assembly to deliver what many considered the most important speech in galactic history. His words carried the weight of collective realization and regret as he spoke the truth that everyone had been avoiding. We told ourselves we were afraid of human unpredictability, but the real truth is that we were afraid of human capability. He continued with visible emotion. We convinced ourselves that humans needed us as much as we needed them, but they were always the ones solving our problems while we provided nothing but bureaucracy and restrictions. We were like children playing with toys while adults did all the real work, and when we got scared of the adults, we sent them away. The final and most devastating irony came when several human exploration vessels appeared at the edge of assembly space. They were not arriving as conquerors, seeking revenge, or as saviors offering help. They were simply explorers mapping new routes to distant galaxies as casually as merchants might survey a new trade route. The human ships ignored the struggling alien civilizations completely, as if they were irrelevant to human plans. Captain Min Ho of the human exploration vessel, New Horizon, transmitted a courteous but distant message. Greetings to the Galactic Assembly. We are conducting a survey of local space lanes for our expansion into the Andromeda sector. We mean no intrusion, and will be gone within a few days. His tone was polite but completely uninterested, as if he were talking to strangers rather than former allies. The human survey ships continued their work with casual efficiency, using technology that the Assembly could barely detect, let alone understand. The vessels seemed to chart entire star systems in hours, completing surveys that would have taken alien science teams years to accomplish. Their equipment operated on principles that made alien sensors register impossible readings as they assembled. Representatives watched the human ships prepare to leave for another galaxy. They finally understood the complete scope of what they had lost. They had not feared human revenge or human anger. Those emotions would have indicated that humans still cared about the galaxy they had left behind. Instead, they had feared human indifference, and that fear had become their new reality. The humans were moving toward achievements that made their former contributions to galactic civilization look like simple charity work. They were expanding beyond the galaxy itself, while their former partners struggled to keep basic life support systems functioning. The species that had once solved everyone's problems had moved on to challenges and opportunities that the Assembly could not even imagine. The wave of fear that had swept through the Assembly when humans departed had been justified, but not for the reasons anyone had expected. They had not feared what humans might do to them. They had feared what humans might become without them holding them back, and now they watched helplessly as humanity reached toward stars beyond counting, while the galaxy they had abandoned slowly died behind them. The great irony was complete. The aliens had voted humans out to preserve their own civilization, but in doing so they had destroyed the very foundation that had made their civilization possible. The galaxy had chosen fear over cooperation, isolation over innovation, and now they faced the consequences of that choice alone in the growing darkness. 6 months after the humans departed, the galaxy faced problems that grew bigger every day. What started as one broken space elevator had become disasters happening everywhere. Systems that had worked perfectly for decades were failing in ways that made no sense to alien engineers. The great shield generators that protected entire planets from deadly space radiation began shutting down one after another. The shield generators were massive machines, the size of cities, that created invisible barriers around populated worlds. Without these shields, cosmic radiation would kill every living thing on the planet's surface in just a few days. The technology had been invented by human physicist Na Young 30 years ago, using scientific principles that seemed like magic to other species. She had combined quantum mechanics with normal engineering in ways that no alien scientist had ever imagined possible. Na Young had spent 5 years working with teams from 12 different planets to build the first shield generator. The project had seemed impossible because no one understood how her theories could work in practice. But she had been patient and explained her ideas step by step until alien engineers could help build the machines. Even then, most of the workers did not really understand what they were building. They just followed her instructions exactly. The shield generators had been designed to maintain themselves automatically using computer programs that Na Young had written. The programs were incredibly complex and could handle almost any problem without outside help. They could detect radiation changes, adjust power levels, and even repair minor damage using robot workers. But now these programs were producing error messages that no one could understand. The first shield to fail protected the peaceful world of Altair 7, where the Makari people had built beautiful crystal gardens that took thousands of years to grow. The Makari were known throughout the galaxy for their philosophy of harmony and their amazing artistic abilities. Their crystal cities were considered some of the most beautiful places in known space, attracting millions of tourists every year. When the shield generator started making strange, humming noises that changed pitch every few minutes, the Makari engineers tried to contact the maintenance team. But they discovered that all the maintenance had been done by human technicians who were no longer available. The technical manuals were written in human scientific language that was much more complex than normal human speech. Chief Engineer Keltar of the Makari spent sleepless days trying to understand the shield generator systems. He gathered the smartest scientists from his world and they worked together, studying every piece of equipment. But the more they learned, the more confused they became. The machine seemed to work by breaking the normal rules of physics in ways that should have been impossible. The shield generator continued to weaken and deadly radiation began reaching the planet's surface. Plants started dying in the northern regions where the radiation was strongest. Animals fled southward, trying to escape the invisible poison that was killing everything in its path. The beautiful crystal gardens that had taken millennia to grow began turning black and crumbling into dust. Emergency evacuation ships arrived to rescue the Makari population. But there were not enough vessels to save everyone. At once families were separated as parents put their children on the first ships while staying behind to help with the evacuation. The northern continent became a wasteland as radiation levels rose beyond what any living thing could survive. Similar disasters were happening on other worlds as more shield generators failed. The patterns made no sense to alien scientists. Some shields lasted longer than others, even though they were identical machines. Some failed completely while others worked, partially creating weak spots where radiation could get through. The unpredictability made it impossible to plan evacuations or prepare for emergencies. The medical crisis began at the same time as the radiation disasters human doctor Yoon Seo had revolutionized healthcare across the galaxy by developing treatments that worked for different alien species. Her research had solved the problem of cross-species medicine, which had puzzled doctors for centuries before humans joined the Galactic community. Yoon Seo had spent decades studying the biology and chemistry of dozens of different alien races. She discovered that many diseases affected multiple species in similar ways, and that treatments could be adapted to work across biological differences. Her medical protocols had saved billions of lives, and her computer programs helped alien doctors diagnose and treat patients they had never seen before. Now the medical computer systems were failing, just like everything else. The programs that Yoon Seo had written were incredibly sophisticated and could learn from new cases to improve their treatments. But without human programmers to update and maintain them, the systems were becoming unreliable, and sometimes gave dangerous advice that could kill patients instead of helping them. On the trade world of Epsilon Ceti, a plague broke out among the Rillan population. The disease caused fever-breathing problems and skin changes that looked familiar to older doctors. They recognized it as the same illness that had almost destroyed the Rillan species 40 years earlier. Back then, the plague had killed millions of people before human medical officer Kyung-ho found a cure. Kyung-ho had worked with traditional Rillan healers to develop a treatment that combined human antibiotics with ancient herbal medicines. The combination seemed strange because it mixed modern science with old folk remedies, but it had worked perfectly and completely eliminated the disease. The cure had been stored in medical databases so it could be used again if needed. But now the medical databases were protected by security systems that only humans could access. The computers recognized that this was the same disease and that a cure existed, but they could not release the treatment information without proper authorization codes that had been programmed by human technicians. The Rillan doctors could see that help was available, but they could not reach it. Thousands of Rillan began dying from the plague while the cure sat locked away in computer files. The irony was terrible because the solution was right there but completely unreachable. The surviving Rillan doctors tried everything they could think of to break into the databases, but the security systems had been designed by humans who were experts at protecting sensitive information. Emergency meetings were called on every major world as leaders tried to figure out what to do. The problems were getting worse, faster than anyone had expected. Alien scientists who had always been proud of their advanced knowledge found themselves helpless when faced with challenges that required creative thinking instead of following established procedures. The Zenthari Collective sent research teams to study failed human equipment, hoping to reverse engineer the technology. But they discovered that human machines were far more complex than they appeared. Human engineers had built multiple backup systems within backup systems, creating layers of redundancy that were almost impossible to understand without the original design documents. What made everything worse was that the failures were spreading in unpredictable ways. When one system broke down, it often caused problems in other systems that seemed completely unrelated. The galaxy had become like a giant machine where every part depended on every other part, but no one understood how all the connections worked, except the humans who had designed it. As reports came in from across the galaxy about failing infrastructure, collapsing medical systems, and technological breakdowns, one terrifying truth became impossible to ignore. They had not just removed humans from the assembly, they had removed the people who understood how everything worked, and now their entire civilization was falling apart piece by piece. 3 months passed after the humans left, and the galaxy felt different. Everything seemed normal at first. Trade ships moved between planets carrying goods and passengers, The communication network still worked properly, and most alien species continued their daily lives without thinking much about the missing humans. But then the first disaster struck without any warning. The massive space elevator on Nexus Station started making terrible grinding noises that echoed through the metal structure like a dying animal. The elevator connected the busy trading station to the planet below, and millions of beings used it every day to transport goods and travel between the surface and space. For 200 years it had worked perfectly, carrying heavy cargo and passenger ships up and down the long cable without any serious problems. Chief Engineer Blackmore of the Xanthari species rushed to the control room when the emergency alarm started screaming. His 6 eyes scanned the computer, screen showing red warning symbols everywhere. The metal supports that held the elevator cable were developing cracks that spread like spiderwebs through the structure. Temperature readings showed that some sections were getting dangerously hot, while others were becoming too cold. Blackmore had been working as an engineer for 40 years and had never seen anything like this. The elevator had always been maintained by human teams led by specialists like Jin Wu and Su Young, who understood the complex systems better than anyone else. The technical manuals were written in human language with instructions that seemed simple when humans explained them, but now looked like impossible puzzles. The maintenance schedule showed that human engineer teams had performed major repairs every 6 months using techniques that other species had never learned. The humans had installed something called adaptive systems that could fix small problems automatically before they became dangerous. These systems had prevented hundreds of disasters over the years, but now they were failing in ways that made no sense. Blackmore called his best engineering team to help figure out what was going wrong. They studied the blueprints and technical documents, but found that most of the critical information was written in human technical language that they could only partly understand. The elevator used human-designed computer programs that learned from experience and changed their behavior to handle new problems. The computer systems had been working perfectly for decades, but now they were producing error messages in human script that no one could translate. The backup systems were also failing because they had been programmed to work together with the main computers in ways that only humans fully understood. When one system failed, it caused problems in other systems, creating a cascade of breakdowns. Ambassador Keektel from the Horthak Collective received urgent reports about the elevator crisis and felt his breathing apparatus wheeze with stress. His species had always been confident about their engineering abilities, but they had relied on human expertise for the most difficult projects. The Horthaks were excellent at maintaining existing systems, but they had never learned how to innovate or solve completely new problems. The situation became worse when cracks appeared in the elevator cable itself. The cable was made from materials that had been developed by human scientists, using a combination of alien metals and earth polymers. The manufacturing process was so complex that only human factories could produce the cable, and all the spare parts were stored in human space. Keektel called an emergency meeting of the assembly council, and his usual confidence was replaced by visible panic. "We need to contact the humans immediately," he declared while his hands shook with worry. "Surely they will help us if we explain how serious this situation is." The other council members nodded in agreement, but they were all thinking the same frightening thought. What if the humans refused to help? The communication officers tried to reach Earth using the same diplomatic channels they had used for 3 centuries, but discovered that all the frequencies were silent. The human embassy stations that had operated throughout the galaxy had been quietly shut down. The humans were not ignoring their calls. They had simply disconnected from all galactic communication networks, as if they had moved to a different universe. Chief Technician Veltar of the Communication Guild tried every possible method to contact human space. He sent messages through trade networks, emergency frequencies, and even old smuggler channels that were supposed to work in any crisis. But every attempt resulted in the same automated response. This communication channel is no longer in service. Please contact your local authorities for assistance. The space elevator continued to deteriorate with new cracks appearing every hour. Structural engineers from 12 different species worked together, trying to understand how the human-designed systems functioned, but their efforts only made things worse. When they tried to repair one section, it caused failures somewhere else because they did not understand how all the parts worked together. Emergency evacuation orders were issued for Nexus Station as the elevator became too dangerous to use. Millions of beings who had lived and worked there for generations packed their belongings and boarded refugee ships. The station had been one of the most important trading hubs in the galaxy, but now it was turning into a ghost town. As families fled to safer worlds, the evacuation ships struggled to handle the massive number of refugees. Most vessels were designed for short trips between planets, not for carrying thousands of passengers on long journeys to distant worlds. The refugee crisis spread to nearby systems as planets tried to find places for all the displaced beings. Many worlds closed their borders because they could not handle so many newcomers. News of the Nexus Station disaster spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. Other space elevators and similar structures began reporting minor problems that had never been noticed before. Engineers started checking systems that had been working perfectly for decades and found warning signs that they had never learned to recognize. The realization hit the galactic community like a physical blow. This was not just one isolated problem. The entire galactic civilization had been built using human innovations and maintained by human expertise. Without that knowledge, countless systems were starting to fail in ways that other species could not predict or prevent. Scientists from the Mokari Collective reviewed their records and discovered that humans had been involved in almost every major infrastructure project for the past 3 centuries. Human fingerprints were everywhere in the technology that kept galactic civilization running, from the smallest computer programs to the largest space stations. Chancellor Kexnama from the Viridian Empire stood before an emergency session of the remaining assembly delegates. Her confident demeanor had been replaced by obvious fear as she read reports from across the galaxy. Similar problems were appearing on dozens of worlds as systems that had always worked perfectly began showing signs of failure. The delegates sat in stunned silence as they listened to report after report of technical difficulties that their best engineers could not solve. They had always assumed that they understood the technology they used every day, but now they realized that humans had been quietly maintaining and improving everything, while other species had focused on politics and trade. As the emergency session continued into the night, one terrible truth became clear to everyone in the room. They had not just expelled humans from the assembly. They had expelled the problem solvers, the innovators, the people who had been keeping their entire civilization from falling apart. Now they were alone with challenges that seemed impossible to solve, and for the first time in centuries they had no idea what to do next. The giant meeting hall of the Galactic Assembly became very quiet as the human ships flew away into space. The silence felt heavy and scary, like something bad was about to happen. Ambassador Taemin had not made any angry speech or shouted at anyone. He just bowed politely and said words that everyone still remembered. "We understand your decision. Humanity will remember this day." His voice was calm, but something in his tone made all the alien leaders feel worried. Dr. Heejin stood next to Taemin as she packed away all her research files. She had worked on these projects for many years with scientists from different planets. Now she was putting everything into boxes with careful movements. Her face showed no feelings, but her hands shook a little as she sealed away decades of work that had helped the entire galaxy solve difficult problems. The other delegates watched the humans leave and felt strange emotions they could not explain. For 300 years, humans had been the most important species in galactic civilization. When machines broke down that no one else could fix, humans would come and repair them. When diseases spread across planets and killed millions of people, human doctors would find cures. When space pirates attacked peaceful worlds, human soldiers would fight battles that seemed impossible to win. Captain Dong-ho had saved the Vegan colonies from complete destruction when unknown raiders attacked their trading posts. He led a small fleet against enemy ships that outnumbered his forces 10-1. Most alien commanders said the mission was suicide, but Dong-ho found a way to use asteroid fields and solar radiation to defeat enemies with better weapons. His tactics were so strange that even his own officers did not understand his plans until they worked perfectly. Engineer Boram had spent 8 months on Vega Prime when the Crystal City started falling apart from a mysterious disease that ate through their building materials. The local scientists tried everything they knew, but the plague kept spreading and destroying homes where millions of families lived. Bo-Ram worked day and night in dangerous conditions, testing different solutions until she discovered that a combination of earth bacteria and vegan minerals could stop the disease and repair the damaged crystals. Dr. Yun Seo had revolutionized medicine across the galaxy by figuring out how to treat patients from completely different species. Her research centers on 12 different worlds had saved billions of lives by developing new ways to perform surgery and create medicines that worked for beings with different body chemistry. The medical computers she programmed could diagnose diseases in alien patients better than their own doctors. Now all the humans were gone, and the empty chairs in the assembly hall looked like missing teeth in a smile. The official reason for voting humans out of the assembly was disagreements about sharing resources and trade agreements. But everyone knew the real truth. Fear had made them vote against humanity. Fear of the way humans solved problems in ways that seemed impossible. Fear of how they always found answers when everyone else gave up. Fear of their strange ability to remain calm during terrible disasters that made other species panic. The Calarian representative Flixtar kept touching his crystal arms nervously as he stared at the empty human section. His species was known for being logical and never showing emotions, but even he felt scared about what would happen without human help. The Calarians had always been proud of their advanced mathematics and engineering skills, but humans had taught them new ways to build things that were stronger and lasted longer. Ambassador Kektel from the Vorthax species kept checking her communication device every few minutes, hoping the humans would send a message asking to return to the assembly, or at least demanding an explanation for why they were being kicked out. But her screen stayed empty. The humans had said nothing after the vote. They did not argue or complain or threaten anyone. They just accepted the decision and started packing their things. This silence scared everyone more than angry. Words would have, the aliens had expected humans to fight the decision or at least try to change their minds. Most species would have spent days arguing and making speeches about unfair treatment. But humans had simply stood up, collected their belongings, and walked to their ships as if they had been expecting this to happen all along. The maintenance robot started removing the nameplate that said Earth Sol System from the Great Assembly Hall where it had hung for 3 centuries. The metal plate made a scraping sound as it came off the wall, and that small noise seemed very loud in the quiet room. Many delegates flinched when they heard it, as if the sound was announcing the end of something important. Representative Theta 9 from the Mokari Collective remembered when humans first joined the assembly 300 years ago. Back then, most species thought humans were primitive because they came from a small planet in an unimportant part of the galaxy. Their technology seemed simple, compared to the advanced machines that other civilizations had developed over thousands of years. But humans had something different. They could look at problems that had puzzled alien scientists for generations and find solutions in days or weeks. They did not follow the same logical patterns that other species used. Instead, they tried crazy ideas that should not have worked but somehow did. They combined different technologies in ways that seemed random but created amazing results. When the Xanthari space elevator collapsed 50 years ago, killing thousands of workers and stranding millions of people on the planet's surface, every engineering team in the galaxy said it could not be rebuilt. The damage was too severe and the technology too complex. But human engineer Jin Wu studied the wreckage for 2 weeks and then proposed a completely new design that was better than the original. The new elevator became a model that other worlds copied. The voting had been very close only. 12 votes decided that humans should leave the assembly. Many delegates had changed their minds several times during the debates. Some species worried that humans were becoming too powerful and might try to control other civilizations. Others argued that human unpredictability made them dangerous allies who might cause problems in the future. Chancellor Kex Nama from the Viridian Empire had given the final speech before the vote. She talked about maintaining balance among different species and preventing any one civilization from having too much influence. But as she watched the human ships disappear into hyperspace, she wondered if they had made a terrible mistake. The assembly hall felt different now without human voices in the discussions. For 3 centuries, humans had participated in every major decision, asking questions that other species never thought of, and suggesting solutions that seemed impossible but often worked. Their absence left a gap that felt much bigger than just empty chairs. As the last human transport ship vanished into the stars, many delegates began to feel a cold fear growing in their stomachs. They had just cut ties with the species that had solved their biggest problems and saved them from countless disasters. Now they were alone with whatever challenges the future might bring, and for the first time in centuries, they had no idea how they would handle them without human help. The great assembly hall grew darker as the automated lights dimmed for the night cycle, but the fear in every delegate's heart burned brighter than any artificial illumination. They had voted for what they thought was safety, but instead they might have chosen their own destruction.